63 doesn't feel like anything really. It's not a milestone. It's not a round number. It just sounds tired. I spent the morning like I always do. Black coffee, the crossword, the creak of the porch swing under me, and a view of a lawn that refuses to stay green no matter how much I water it. It was quiet, comfortable in that lonely kind of way I've gotten used to since Ezra
Stop speaking to me.
Then came the knock. Not the impatient tap of the mailman or the neighbor kid selling coupons. Just one knock, then the sound of footsteps retreating. I opened the door and saw the box plain. Brown paper carefully taped a thin blue ribbon tied once around the middle.
There was no doubt about the
handwriting. I hadn't seen it in 3 years, but I would have known it with my eyes closed. Ezra wrote like a blueprint. Precise, no wasted curves. Always in blue ink. I didn't open it right away. I just stood there barefoot on the doormat, staring at the neat letters spelling out my name. Marlene Greavves. I whispered it under my breath like it might sound different somehow coming from him.
Back inside, I set the package on the
kitchen table. The coffee had gone cold. I reheated it and sat down, folding my hands in my lap like I was waiting to be
called on.
After 3 years of silence, not even a card when I had pneumonia, not a word when my sister passed away.
Now,
this eventually curiosity won.
Inside.
The paper was a white box, and inside, that nestled in tissue like they were fragile, were cookies, dozens of them, carefully iced, each one different.
Blue.
Flowers, golden leaves, stars with sugar. Dust, all handmade. Ezra had never baked a day in his life. No note except a small card taped to the inside of the lid. Happy birthday, Mom. Let's start over. I held the card like it might vanish if I blinked. My throat
tightened.
Not quite a lump, just that soft ache that creeps in when you want something to be real, but don't trust it
yet.
I didn't eat them. I wanted to, but I didn't. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was fear. Or maybe it was something quieter. Something I couldn't name, but didn't want to ignore. I slipped one cookie into a small Tupperware container, sealed it, and placed it in the fridge. The rest I rewrapped carefully. Ruth Langford lived just 15 minutes away. Ezra's mother-in-law. She'd always been good to me, especially when Ezra got distant. I figured if anyone deserved something sweet, it was her, and it felt easier to give them away than to wonder what they meant. That afternoon I drove over. The sun was low enough to cast that soft orange light across the trees, and her wind chimes were already dancing. I handed her the box with a smile, brushing off her protests. Later at home, I stood in the doorway, looking at the empty spot on the table where the package had been, and tried not to feel relieved that it was gone. The next morning, just as I was pouring coffee, the phone rang. I was halfway through pouring my second cup of coffee when the phone rang. The sound startled
me.
It's been a long time since anyone called this early, and longer still since that number flashed across the screen. Ezra. I didn't answer right away. My hand hovered over the phone like it might burn me. The call buzzed once more before I picked up. Hello. Hi, Mom. His voice, smooth and casual, slipped through the line like nothing had happened. Like 3 years of silence hadn't settled between us, like sediment. Happy birthday. A little late. I know, Ezra. I sat down slowly, gripping the mug with both hands. I got your package. Yeah. A soft chuckle. I wasn't sure you would. I wasn't sure you'd open it honestly. I did. It was unexpected. There was a beat of silence. And then he asked a little too casually. So, how were they? The cookies. Yeah. I took a breath. Oh, I didn't eat them. I gave them to Ruth. The line went dead. Quiet. I pulled the phone away from my ear to check if the call had dropped.
It
Hadn't. You gave them to Ruth.
His voice
Was different now. Sharper. The warmth evaporated. Yes, I said slowly. She's always loved
sweets.
and I didn't know what to do with them. He didn't speak for a long moment. I could hear his breathing, tight and uneven, then quietly at first, but with building force. You did what? The words hit like a slap. I blinked.
Stunned.
Ezra, what's wrong?
They
Weren't for her, he snapped. They were.
for you.
Only you. His voice cracked, not with sadness, but something else. Frustration, maybe even panic.
I
Couldn't tell. I sat frozen, the coffee
cooling in my hands. I didn't know I
said, my voice small.
right.
Of course.
You didn't.
The bitterness bled through, thick and choking. You never do.
He hung
Up before I could say anything else.
the
Dial tone hummed in my ear.
I set the
Phone down slowly, staring at the
counter.
My heart thudded it in my chest, not fast, but deep, like it wanted to be heard. Only you. That's what he'd said. I stood, walked to the fridge, and opened it. The small container was still there, one perfect cookie, untouched.
I
Shut the fridge and leaned against the counter, suddenly cold. That's when the other phone rang, the landline in the
hallway.
Almost no one used it anymore. I walked toward it, dread already spreading.
The
landline crackled when I picked it up, like the receiver had forgotten how to carry a voice. Marlene. It was Leah, Ezra's wife.
yes.
Her voice was strained, brittle. It's Ruth.
She's
In the hospital. I sat down without meaning to. What happened? She collapsed. This morning. Vomiting, disoriented.
I
Thought it was the flu, but it got
worse.
She couldn't stand. She was
Confused.
The ER says they can't find anything definitive. They're running tests now. My mouth went dry. Did she eat anything unusual? A pause. She mentioned cookies.
Said you
Brought them over. I did. I gave her the box Ezra sent me. Leah didn't speak.
I
Could hear hospital noises in the
background.
monitors, heels on tile. A cart squeaking down a hall. Do you think they could have made her sick? She finally asked. I swallowed. I don't.
No.
I didn't need any myself. Another silence. If you think of anything at all, you'll tell
Me.
Yes, I whispered. Of course.
We
Hung up, and I sat there in the dim light, staring at the wall. The afternoon sun had faded and left the living room in a dull haze. I didn't turn on the lights. I didn't move for a long time. Later, after dark, I wandered into the kitchen with the aimless instinct of someone looking for order. I started cleaning, wiping down surfaces, folding towels that didn't need folding.
I
Opened the trash to empty it and saw something near the bottom. A small clear plastic bottle, like the kind vitamins.
come in.
No label, just a faint ring of white powder clinging to the inside.
Wall.
I reached in and picked it up, turning it in my hands. It wasn't mine. I hadn't seen it before. The cap was still screwed on tight.
I
Opened the fridge. The cookie was still there, tucked into its little container, like it had been waiting for this moment. My hands shook as I lifted it
out.
I hadn't even remembered why I saved it. Something sweet for later. A small kindness for myself. Now I couldn't look at it without feeling sick. I carried the cookie and the empty bottle into the study and set them on
The desk.
the lamp light made the sugar crystals sparkle faintly. I sat down and folded my hands, staring at both like they might blink first. Was I the target?
Was
It meant for me? The questions hung. They're too big to touch. Later, just before bed, I called the lab, where Janelle Marora worked.
She owed
Me a favor. I didn't say much, just that I needed something tested quietly. She said she could meet me in the morning. I hung up the phone and stood in the middle of the room for a long time before turning out the light.
in.
The quiet, I could still hear Ezra's voice in my head. You did what the cookies stayed in the fridge that night.
So did the dread. The
Lab was tucked behind a medical office complex on the edge of town, the kind of place you'd never notice unless you were looking for it. Janelle came out herself to meet me in the parking lot. Her lab coat too crisp for how early it was.
she
Didn't ask many questions, just raised an eyebrow when I handed her the container. This the kind of favor I'll regret? She asked lightly. I tried to smile, but couldn't quite make it land. Just tell me what's in it, she nodded, and disappeared through the side door.
I
Sat in my car, with the engine running, and the radio off. My hands were cold.
I
Didn't drive away. I couldn't. Memories crept in like water under a door. Ezra, at 8 folding napkins at the dinner table, with sharp geometric precision. Ezra, at 10 throwing a tantrum when I rearranged the pantry by color instead of size. Ezra, at 12 refusing to speak to me for a full week after I forgot to use the right brand of ketchup on his sandwich. Back then I'd called it quirks.
said he
Was particular, sensitive, brilliant in school, obedient in public, a model child on paper. But I remembered too the way he watched people eat. Watched me. That time I baked cookies with walnuts by mistake, and he spit one into the trash, then scrubbed his mouth until his lips bled. The way he went completely still when disappointed, like he was storing it for later. A nurse from the hospital called mid-morning. Ruth's condition hadn't improved. They were escalating her case to internal medicine. Still no diagnosis. No one had mentioned the cookies, and I didn't volunteer the idea. I sat in the kitchen waiting for Janelle to call, hands wrapped around a cup of tea I didn't drink. The mug went cold. The house creaked around me like it was listening. Ezra had always been good at playing the long game. He didn't explode like some kids. He planned, held things. You could watch him take a slight file it away and bring it back sharper later. When the phone rang just after noon, I
jumped.
It's Janelle, she said. We ran the standard panels. Then I had them go
Deeper.
I held my breath.
There's
something in the cookie, she said. Traces of a compound related to an item. Monk's hood. It's highly toxic.
rare to
Find in food. Definitely not an accident. I closed my eyes. You said someone ate
these.
I couldn't answer her.
She
Hesitated. I'll write it up quietly. After we hung up, I sat still for a long
time.
My son had sent me poison in a gift box. A box I'd passed on like it was nothing. Later that evening, I found myself outside again, pacing the front walkway, unsure what I was looking for. The sun was going down. The wind carried the faint scent of cinnamon. Or maybe that was just memory. Then my phone buzzed again. Unknown number. I answered. The voice on the other end of the unknown number was calm, clipped, and unfamiliar. This is Detective Fallon Reyes.
Are you
Marlene Greavves? I hesitated. Yes, I was referred by Dr. Janelle Marora. She said, you requested toxicology analysis on a food item and asked that any concerning results be passed along to authorities.
Is that
correct? I wanted to say no,
to claim
some kind of misunderstanding to protect the last shreds of what used to be family, but I heard myself say, yes, that's correct. There was a pause, professional but not unkind. Would you be willing to meet to discuss the results and your concerns?
I
agreed, but it felt like signing something permanent. We met that afternoon in a small office, tucked behind the police station. Nothing dramatic. Reyes looked young for a detective, maybe mid-30s, with sharp eyes that didn't rest long. He offered me water, which I declined. My hands wouldn't stop moving, folding and unfolding a tissue I hadn't realized I brought. He started soft, asked how long I'd been estranged from Ezra, how often we spoke when I received the package, what it contained, how Ruth Langford came into the picture. I answered every question plainly with as much precision as I could manage, avoiding the emotion that kept threatening to surface. He listened closely, jotting notes on a yellow legal pad. He didn't interrupt. Then he asked, the harder ones. Do you believe your son meant to harm you? I looked down at my hands. I don't want to believe it, I said. But the cookie had poison in it. Ruth didn't bake it. I didn't bake it. He sent it. And the bottle you found in the trash, it wasn't mine. The timing fits. Any reason he'd want to harm you? Financial motive? Family tension? I flinched. He resents me. Always has, I think. Blames me for things I couldn't fix. Reyes nodded slightly, but I saw the doubts swimming in the space between his eyes. All I had was a poisoned cookie and a feeling in my gut. No fingerprints, no witness, no confession. He leaned forward. Would you be willing to submit the cookie and the bottle as evidence? Let's open a formal case. I hesitated. It felt like betrayal, even though I knew better. Even though Ezra had made his move first. Yes, I said. Finally. If there's any chance he's done this before or would do it again, I can't ignore that. He nodded and stood, signaling the end of the meeting. We'll log the items and keep you informed. If anything changes, please call me directly. As I walked out of the station, the sky was beginning to darken. I got into my car, locked the doors out of habit, and sat with my hands on the steering wheel. It wasn't guilt exactly. It was something older, deeper. The knowledge that motherhood didn't end just because the child had changed. The part of me that had once packed Ezra's school lunches now sat quiet and stunned, trying to understand how the boy I raised became the man who sent me a box of poison wrapped in ribbon. That night, I didn't sleep. I left the hall light on. Every creak in the house made me sit up and listen. By morning, I had decided, if he didn't want me to know what he was capable of, he should have been more careful. I would go see him, not as his mother, but as the woman he underestimated. And I would bring a recorder. Ezra answered the door with a tight smile, the kind that didn't reach his eyes. He looked thinner than I remembered, like something inside him had been slowly hollowing out. Mom, he said, stepping aside. This is a surprise. I forced a smile. I heard about Ruth. I wanted to check in, see how she's doing. He nodded, gesturing me in. She's still at St. Luke's. Leia's with her. They think it's some kind of virus. I nodded like I believed it. The phone in my coat pocket was already recording. His kitchen was spotless, as always, a place where everything had a place down to the angle of the knife block. I kept my tone light. I'm sorry. We didn't get to talk more the other day, I said. The cookies were lovely. Ezra raised an eyebrow. Were they? I watched his face. I didn't try them, actually. Ruth was thrilled. She said the star-shaped one was her favorite. There it was, the flicker. Barely a pause, but enough. His eyes narrowed, just for a second, and his voice softened. Ruth picked the stars. I hadn't said what shape she ate, only that she liked one. Yes, I said slowly. She mentioned it. He turned to the sink. rinsing a glass that didn't need washing. She always did go for anything
Pretty.
always more concerned with aesthetics than what's underneath.
I
Studied him. You never told me you'd started baking. He laughed, but it sounded off.
New hobby. Good way to.
Unwind. Where'd you learn to use monks? A hood? He froze.
Not visibly, not.
Dramatically. But something shifted in his spine. A stillness that told me he was deciding how to react. I don't know what that is, he said too.
Quickly.
Dr. Mororo does. He turned, the glass still in his hand. You went to
Janelle.
She ran the test. It was in the
Cookie.
Ezra, I don't know what you think you're doing, he said, setting the glass down with care. But accusations
Like that.
they don't end well, especially without proof. I think you've already given me enough, I said quietly. You slipped up.
He stared at me for a long time. His
Face didn't move, but something behind his eyes did. A flicker of calculation. You've always misunderstood me, he
said. No, I said.
I think I finally understand you completely. I reached for my purse, keeping my hands steady. My heart was thudding so loudly I was sure he could hear it. As I turned to leave, my eyes landed on the counter behind him. There, partially obscured by a tea towel, was another small bottle, identical in shape to the one I'd found in my trash. Ezra noticed my glance.
He
moved to block the counter casually as if stretching. I should go, I said. I've already taken up enough of your time. Give Ruth my best, he said, voice light again.
I
Stepped outside into the cold air, every nerve in my body alert. The phone in my coat pocket was still running.
I didn't
stop it until I was back in my car. Doors, locked, engine running. I sent the audio to Detective Reyes before I could change my mind. And then I drove straight to St. Luke's. Ruth was still unconscious. Leia sat beside her, eyes red. I told her what I had to everything. By the time I left, the sun had gone down and the sky was heavy. That night I slept on the couch with the hallway light on, the phone beside me.
I didn't close my
eyes for more than a few minutes at a
time.
When it finally rang at 3:17 a.m., I didn't flinch. Detective Reyes called just after sunrise. The audio was enough.
Coupled
with the toxicology results in Ruth's medical report, it gave them the warrant they needed. Ezra was taken in before
noon.
Quiet, composed, like he'd rehearsed it. I didn't go down to the station. There was nothing left
to say.
Ruth woke slowly over the next few days, confused, then grateful, then
silent.
I sat with her when Leia
couldn't.
She didn't ask for details, and I didn't offer them. One afternoon, I took her hand and said, I'm sorry. She squeezed it once. That was enough. Leia cried in my kitchen later that
week.
She said she should have known that Ezra had grown distant, strange. She'd found strange notations in his journals, jars of dried plants she didn't recognize. She thought he was just coping with what she didn't know. Turns out Ezra had been writing under a false name on obscure herbalist forums for years. Descriptions of extractions, dosages, interactions, academic in tone, chilling in hindsight. Some of the terminology matched exactly what was found in Ruth's blood work. It all came back to one decision, one cookie I hadn't eaten. I took the container out of the fridge on a quiet Tuesday morning. The cookie was still intact, though the frosting had dulled. Detective Reyes had given me a sealed evidence bag the day Ezra was arrested, in case I wanted to hold on to it.
Not
for revenge, he'd said, but for clarity. I slid the cookie into the bag and pressed the seal shut. It felt heavier than it should have. That night I cleared out a small fireproof box from the hall closet and placed the cookie inside. Alongside it, I added the card from the package. Happy birthday, Mom. Let's start over. I locked the box and placed it on the highest shelf, not to forget to remember what I almost missed. I stood in the kitchen a long time after.
That.
The house quiet around me, the air
Still.
Then I turned off the light and walked down the hall, unsure whether to feel safe again or if I ever really had.